Chapter 1. Ashes of the Battlefield. The sky burned, not with fire, but with a pale shimmer of orbital cannons streaking through the atmosphere, leaving glowing scars across the clouds. The battlefield below was a graveyard of machines, broken walkers half sunken in ash, twisted exosuits strewn like discarded husks, and trenches filled with silent bodies. The air reeked of ozone and scorched metal, carrying the faint tang of blood both alien and human. Commander Carithia dragged herself across the mud, one arm useless, and her side leaking dark ichor from a plasma wound. Her breath rasped in her throat, shallow and defiant, even as her vision flickered. She turned her gaze toward the retreating shapes of her own soldiers, once her legion, now shadows abandoning her to die. Their banners glimmered briefly against the smoldering horizon before vanishing into smoke. "Cowards," she hissed, her voice breaking into a cough. Her kind valued strength above all, and in their eyes, a wounded commander was already a corpse. The battlefield answered with silence, broken only by the groan of collapsing steel. Then footsteps, soft, deliberate, too light for her kind, too slow for machines. She forced her eyes up. A human. He emerged from the haze like some stubborn ghost, armor scuffed and patched with makeshift plating, helmet tucked under one arm. His dark hair was damp with sweat, his jaw unshaven. The alien battlefield seemed to recoil from his presence, as though even the ash hesitated to cling to him. His eyes swept the ruins with the weary vigilance of someone who had walked through too many wars and refused to bow to any of them. Carithia bared her fangs, though the motion nearly made her faint. "Finish it," she rasped in her native tongue. "Do not toy with me." To her shock, the human crouched beside her, instead of drawing his weapon. He pulled a battered medkit from his belt, the white paint scuffed away, and muttered in his rough accent, "You're not my enemy right now. You're just someone bleeding out." She blinked, disbelieving. His hands were calloused, clumsy compared to the elegant precision of her people's healers, yet steady as he tore strips of fabric and pressed them against her wound. The heat seared, and she snarled in pain, but he didn't flinch. "Your army left you," he said simply, without pity. "Mine would have done the same. Difference is, I don't leave people behind." Her chest tightened, not from the injury, but from the words. Among her kind, survival was solitary. Yet here was a human, an enemy, a mercenary, wasting precious minutes of his fragile life to save hers. The ground trembled as distant engines thundered. Patrols. He glanced toward the sound, then back at her, eyes hardening with a decision already made. "You're coming with me," he said. Before she could protest, his arm slid beneath her broken frame. He lifted her, grunted with the effort, but refusing to falter. Against the smoke and the dying light of orbital fire, a single human carried her away from the battlefield her own people had condemned her to. For the first time since her fall, Carithia felt the strange weight of something her culture had no word for: trust. Chapter 2. Stranger in the Ruins. The ruins groaned as if the city itself still remembered dying. Once a mining colony, the settlement lay in blackened husks, collapsed ferrocrete walls, shattered glass domes, rusting frames of habitation pods torn apart by plasma fire. Flickering neon signs still clung to half-working circuits, buzzing faintly in languages no one had spoken here in years. Wind carried the acrid stench of burned alloys and fungal spores that had begun creeping back through cracks. Daniel shoved aside a panel of scorched plating, ducking inside what had once been a maintenance outpost. The air was cool within, shadows layered thick. He lowered Carithia onto a makeshift bed of thermal blankets, his breath ragged from carrying her through kilometers of ash. Her eyes snapped open the moment her body touched the ground. Pupils narrowed to vertical slits, glowing faintly amber in the gloom. She hissed in her language, a sound halfway between a curse and a growl. "Why bring me here, human? You risk your own life for a dying enemy. Daniel stripped the seal from a ration bottle and pressed it into her clawed hand, because leaving you behind felt wrong. She stared at the bottle as though it were poison. Her kind accepted aid only from kin, never from foes. Yet her throat tightened at the memory of crawling alone, abandoned in the mud. Her pride battled her survival instinct. She lifted it, sniffed, then drank, the liquid staining the edges of her scaled lips. Daniel busied himself with the medkit, sterilizing a strip of scent bandage. The faint hum of its auto-seal filled the silence. "Your people left you," he said, not looking at her. "Mine would have called it a tactical retreat. But we both know what it really is." Her jaw tightened. She wanted to deny it, to defend her people, but the truth festered too deep. She watched his hands as he worked, imperfect, scarred, quick to improvise with tools never meant for alien physiology. It was crude, but it was effort. Her own soldiers had offered her nothing. "You humans are reckless," she murmured finally. "No discipline. No order." Yet her voice cracked. "You still lift the fallen." Daniel looked up, meeting her eyes. His were plain, human brown, but unwavering. Order doesn't mean a damn thing if you can't look someone in the eye after the fight. That's the difference. For a long time, only the wind spoke, whistling through cracked walls. Carithia shifted, her claws curling against the blanket. Suspicion still lingered, but beneath it flickered something alien to her, a spark of curiosity. He leaned back against the wall, exhaustion settling into his shoulders. Outside, faint patrol lights swept across the ruins, searching. Inside, two enemies shared the dim glow of a fading neon sign, bound by necessity and by something neither yet dared name. For the first time since her army left her, Carithia did not feel entirely alone. Chapter 3. Pursued by Shadows. The night sky above the ruins glowed faintly violet, lit by distant plasma storms in the upper atmosphere. Every few seconds a thunder of engines rolled across the horizon, patrol ships sweeping for stragglers. Daniel kept his hand on Carithia's arm as they moved, half support, half restraint. She hated the indignity of leaning on him, but her wounded leg gave way too often for pride to be useful. The shattered forest that ringed the colony was alive with eerie light. Crystal trees that had cracked under bombardment still pulsed faintly, humming like dying circuitry. Each step crunched over shards that glowed under their boots. Carithia's nostrils flared, catching the acrid tang of human sweat beneath his armor. It was a scent unfamiliar to her kind, raw, stubborn, unashamed of weakness. She spoke low, words sharp. "You do not move like soldiers. Your steps scattered, chaotic." Daniel smirked, adjusting the rifle slung across his back. "Funny thing about chaos. Harder to predict. Your army marches in perfect lines. Easy to ambush. Me? I survive because no one knows what the hell I'll do next." Before she could respond, a sharp whine pierced the air. Search drones drifted between the glowing trees, their blue optics scanning. Daniel yanked her down into the roots of a fallen crystal giant. The ground vibrated as the machines hovered past. Her hand brushed his chest by accident, armor rough beneath her claws, and she felt his heart hammering wildly. Yet he didn't freeze or panic. He breathed slow, steady, forcing calm where her people would rely on drilled reflex. When the drones glided away, he exhaled and grinned crookedly. "See? Chaos works." She hissed softly, half in irritation, half in awe. Or luck. They pressed on. The terrain grew harsher. Bridges of fungi spanning black rivers, their surface glowing faintly blue. Carithia warned him not to touch the spores, but he had already torn a strip of cloth, fashioning makeshift filters for their mouths. Improvised, clumsy, but effective. She could not deny the ingenuity. The ambush came at the river's edge. Figures emerged from the mist, Her own kind, armor plates gleaming with the insignia of her legion. For a heartbeat, Carithia's chest tightened with something close to hope. But their blades ignited, aimed not at Daniel, but at her. "Loose ends," she whispered bitterly. Daniel didn't hesitate. He shoved her behind the fungal roots and opened fire, his rifle's report echoing through the crystalline valley. The fight was messy, close, brutal. He fought like no soldier she had ever seen, rolling, throwing dirt, striking with fists when ammo ran low. Improvised chaos. And somehow, impossibly, they survived. When silence returned, Carithia's gaze lingered on him. His breathing was ragged, blood streaked across his cheek, yet he grinned through it all. In that grin, she saw something her people had abandoned long ago, an unyielding refusal to let the universe dictate who lived and who died. For the first time, she wondered if humanity's greatest weapon was not its technology, but its defiance. Chapter 4, The Weight of Honor. The derelict starship loomed like a corpse half buried in the valley. Its hull was split wide open, ribs of alloy jutting into the night sky. What remained of its interior smelled of rust, ozone, and the faint, sour trace of something that had lived here long after the crew perished. Daniel guided Carithia through a torn corridor, the weak glow of his wrist lamp throwing their shadows against the scarred metal walls. They found a chamber where gravity still half functioned, and collapsed among shattered consoles. The hum of broken reactors echoed faintly, like a dying heartbeat. Carithia sat rigid against the bulkhead, claws tapping a slow rhythm on her gauntlet. Her wound ached, but it was not pain that gnawed at her, it was shame. Shame that her legion had left her to rot. Shame that her honor, once unbreakable, had been reduced to rubble. Daniel worked in silence, tightening the seals of her bandages. She watched him, amber eyes gleaming in the dim light. His hands were steady, unflinching even when she hissed at the sting. He had no right to touch her, yet she did not pull away. Finally, she broke the silence. "You think me weak." Daniel glanced up, one eyebrow raised. "I think you were betrayed. Big difference." Her throat vibrated with a low growl. "Among my kind, to fall and be abandoned is proof of weakness, proof that I am unworthy." He leaned back, resting his rifle across his knees. His voice was calm, but carried an edge of defiance. "Among mine, leaving someone behind is the greatest disgrace. You want to call yourself unworthy? Fine, but don't let them define that for you." Her jaw tightened. His words struck something raw, something she had buried beneath duty and command. She wanted to lash out, to silence him with venom, but instead her claws flexed uselessly against the metal floor. "You humans," she whispered, "cling to loyalty as if it were armor, even when it drags you into ruin." Daniel's mouth twitched into a half-smile. "Yeah, maybe that's what makes us different. We'd rather go down together than live knowing we abandoned someone." For a long moment, she studied him. The faint light caught the scar along his jaw, the exhaustion in his shoulders, the stubborn fire in his eyes. Something stirred in her chest, a recognition that this fragile, chaotic species possessed a strength her own people had forgotten. She reached up, unfastening her gauntlet. The alien metal clattered against the floor, echoing in the hollow ship. When she spoke, her voice was low, almost reluctant. Perhaps loyalty is heavier than honor. Daniel didn't answer. He just sat beside her in the dim wreckage, their silence heavier than words, as patrol lights flickered far beyond the broken hull. Chapter 5, A Human's Reckless Gambit. The derelict starship creaked like a beast in its death throes, metal ribs straining as winds howled through ruptured hull plates. Shadows flickered with each arc of lightning that clawed the violet sky outside. Daniel crouched over a cracked console, sweat dripping down his brow, fingers moving with restless urgency. Around him lay scavenged parts, alien grenades, fragments of shattered drones, coils of human deck cord patched with alien power cells. To Carithia's disciplined eyes, it was a mess of mismatched debris. To him, it was a plan. "You cannot be serious," she growled, her voice low but trembling with something more than anger. "This chaos is not strategy. It is suicide." Daniel grinned without looking up, tightening the last connection. Sparks leapt. Funny thing about suicide missions, they tend to work if the other side doesn't see them coming. Before she could argue, the sound reached them, boots on metal, the steady march of her people. Their voices echoed down the corridor, clipped, efficient, merciless. Carithia felt her throat tighten. They had not come to rescue her. They had come to erase the shame of her survival. Daniel pressed a hand against her shoulder. "Stay low. When they hit the choke point, I light him up." Her pride bristled. "I will not cower while you—" Not cowering, he cut her off, eyes steady. "Living. There's a difference." The enemy entered the broken hull in tight formation, weapons raised, moving with the perfect synchronicity of trained soldiers. For a moment, Carithia almost admired them. Her people, so precise, so strong. Then she remembered how they had turned their backs on her. The trap snapped shut. Daniel hurled the first charge down the corridor. It detonated in a blinding flash, sending fragments of crystal and steel cascading like shrapnel. Confused shouts rang out as their formation broke. Daniel sprang from cover, rifle spitting fire. He fought like no soldier she ever seen, rolling between beams of plasma, ducking under collapsing girders, hurling debris as distractions. Improvised chaos. Carithia joined him, claws slicing through one of her kin in a brutal arc. For the first time, she fought not for legion or honor, but beside a human who refused to yield. The battle was chaos-embodied, zero-gravity sections where bodies spun in eerie silence, sparks flaring like stars, blood drifting in weightless beads. When the last soldier fell, the derelict was silent again, except for Daniel's ragged breathing. He staggered, hand pressed to his side, blood seeping through his armor. Carithia caught him before he fell, her claws gentle for once. "Fool!" she whispered, voice cracking. "You burn yourself to save even those who are not yours." He managed a crooked smile, teeth red with blood. That's the point. For the first time in her life, Carithia felt the weight of loyalty not as a chain, but as a gift. Chapter 6. Chosen Allegiance. The dawn broke cold over the battlefield ruins. Mist curled along the shattered plains, wrapping the burned skeletons of walkers and craters in pale light. From the distance came the deep roar of transports. Her people returning, not with mercy, but with authority. Carithia shifted Daniel's weight against her shoulder as she climbed the ridge of broken ferrocrete. He was half conscious, jaw tight, breath shallow, blood still seeping beneath the jury-rigged bandages. Every step cost her, but she carried him as he once carried her, her claws gripping his armor, as if letting go would mean betraying something more than his life. The patrols formed a line on the ridge opposite her, banners fluttering in the wind, weapons gleaming. At their center stood High Commander Vale, his armor polished, his crest high with arrogance. His voice carried across the ruined valley. "Carithia," he barked, "you live, yet you return defiled. Carried by a human, you dishonor us with your weakness." Her claws curled tighter into Daniel's armor. His head lifted faintly, brown eyes unfocused but burning with that stubborn human spark. He whispered, voice raw, "Don't let them own you." The words cut deeper than any blade. Carithia stepped forward, straightening her shoulders, her voice carrying like steel across the field. "It was not I who dishonored our people. It was you, all of you, who abandoned your wounded, your commander, your kin. You preach strength, but you fear compassion. You worship honor, Yet you turn from loyalty. Murmurs rippled through the soldiers. Some shifted uneasily, claws flexing. Vale's face twisted, his voice a snarl. Silence. You are dead to us. She bare her fangs, not in fear but in defiance. Then let me be dead. I choose this human, who bled for me when my own blood left me in the dirt. He is worth 10 of you, because he understands what you never will, that loyalty is stronger than honor. For a heartbeat, the air itself held its breath. Then Carthia turned her back on him. She lifted Daniel higher onto her shoulders, his weight heavy but steady. Without another word, she walked toward the waiting wreck of a human dropship half buried in the ash. Engines coughed to life under her claws, sputtering, then roaring as she coaxed it from its slumber. The alien soldiers did not fire. Some lowered their weapons, torn between orders and the sting of her truth. The dropship shuddered, lifted, and broke free of the battlefield's gravity. Through the cracked viewport, Carthia looked down at the world of her birth, the army that had forsaken her, and felt no belonging. Then she looked at Daniel, pale but alive beside her, and knew she had chosen correctly. The stars opened before them, endless and silent. For the first time, Carthia was not bound by duty or fear. She was bound by something far heavier and far stronger, loyalty. And in that moment, she understood why humanity could never truly be conquered. The hum of the dropship's engine steadied into a low, comforting thrum, like a heartbeat guiding them through the dark. Beyond the cracked viewport, the stars stretched endless, constellations glittering against the ink-black void. Some were familiar to Daniel, others alien and sharp, constellations Carthia had once memorized as a child of her empire. Now they both gazed on them as exiles, and perhaps something more. Daniel lay strapped to a medcot, pale but breathing. The auto-seal gel hissed faintly with each pulse, knitting his torn flesh. Carthia sat beside him, claws resting carefully against his hand, afraid to break him yet unwilling to let go. "Your people will hunt you," Daniel murmured, voice raw but steady. She looked at him, her amber eyes glowing faint in the cabin light. "Let them. They already lost me the moment they left me behind." The ship shuddered as it broke atmosphere, and below them a neon-lit city flickered to life across the horizon of a neutral world. Markets glowing in a dozen alien tongues. Ships rising like fireflies into the night. A new beginning. Carthia leaned closer, her forehead touching his. The gesture was alien to her kind, but she had learned it watching him. Her voice softened, carrying a weight she had once called weakness. "You taught me what honor never could. Loyalty, love." Daniel smiled faintly, eyes closing as the stars bathed them both in silver. "Then we've already won." And together, they drifted toward a future no empire could take from them.